Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to CAD 107, Introduction to 3D Printing, with our weekly Zoom meeting. This week, we will be covering Lab 2. Lab 2 is this Do Not Disturb sign. Our objective is to model the sign using CAD. You can use AutoCAD or SolidWorks. Export the file to 3D model as an STL. And we're going to focus on CAD this week, and we'll take a look at some of the slicing next week. We may go into it a little bit today because I do have some work that students turned in, and I can demonstrate how we'll go through and set that up for 3D printing. There's two videos on how to do the file, on how to create the Do Not Disturb sign with AutoCAD and with SolidWorks. And so this is the SolidWorks file, and I just kind of walk you through how to create the geometry. And then here's the same project with AutoCAD. So there's a file for the AutoCAD. You can download that file and you can then replicate the process. I like to do that so you get so you have an example of how to create the drawing. So we have video tutorials for both of the file. The project itself is located here under Content, Lab 2. Here's a PDF of the document. If we click on that, we can see that this is a metric drawing. The part is 128 millimeters by 55. And then we'll extrude the base 3 millimeters, and then we'll extrude the letters 2 millimeters. And so essentially we're just going to go through and create the geometry for that. Here's the student file. You can download that file and then open it. And you'll see that that file is then set, and you can follow the video to create the three-dimensional version of it. Okay. So as we look at the projects and what we've been working on, once we create a part, you guys are to turn that into the assignments folder. And I had a couple of students that turned in their parts to the assignment folder. And so I'm going to show you what we do with those once we have that file and we're ready to 3D print. We have a software called the Dremel Digilab 3D slicing software. Remember, you need to get this software from it's in here somewhere, but I know I can just Google it from the DIGI Fab, and it's actually Dremel. And you could Google Dremel 3D Slicer. And so here it is. You can download it as a Windows or a Mac version. And then there is a YouTube video on how to use it. Once you've downloaded the software, you can open it. I've already got last week's project open. and it was this this name tag. I did print one, and so here it is. I don't know, it's green. I guess it's going to show up, so that's pretty good. And so this is what you will have. You could put a hole in it and then be able to use it as a something as a lanyard to hold that together. As we look at these files, what we're going to do, if I want to start a new one, I'm just going to delete the other one off. And then I'm going to open up one of the student files from last week. And so I have a number of these files here from one of the students with the gear and the gear base. And so if I open that file up, let's try that again. Yeah, maybe those are the wrong types. Those are 3D object files. We want them as STL files. Let's see if Scott opened them in correctly. Yeah, there it is. And one of the problems is when you create the drawing in inches, you have to scale it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scale that up 2540 times. And that'll be our conversion factor. And so that's what the part will look like. And then what we want to do is in the slicing software, we hit the prepare button. Now, when you first import it, you can drive the software by turning the wheel on the mouse to zoom in and out, pushing the left wheel on the mouse, pushing the right wheel on the mouse, pushing the middle wheel on the mouse. So the left wheel doesn't do anything. It's the middle wheel. You can turn and push it to pan and to zoom, and the right to change the X and Z perspective. Once you've brought that file in, we set up the material. We're going to be using a Dremel PLA, and I realize it went off the screen. I can't help that. It's always something. And then we can look at the quality level. For this one, I'm going to go with a low quality or 0.3 millimeters. And then once we have that set, we'll prepare it. And what that'll do is it'll have the slicing software go through and slice it in 0.3 millimeter increments. And then if you go to this eyeball, the view mode, you can then view how that part is going to be created. And so as I zoom in, push the middle mouse wheel, I can see the first layer, second layer, third layer, and here's where the support material is. You'll notice that it's not printed solid. When we print these, it's printing with what's called an infill. And so they print with like a honeycomb project. And you can actually change the infill type patterns and get some really interesting effects with them if you print some transparent materials. Once we have everything checked and modeled, we can go over here and say print over the network. And I'll say print. That'll cue my software, which I have the Dremel 3D printer. And what the printer is going to do right now is it's going to take the print head and it's going to check the palette leveling. And so there's a little probe that comes out here and it will touch off on the palette. And this is a heated palette. It'll touch off, I think it touches off 9 places. And so it goes through and touches off 3, 3, and 3. And if it's not perfectly level, there's some leveling knobs on the bottom, and it will actually go through and prompt you for how to level it. I can show you how this looks. I have a second webcam, so I'm going to switch over to my 3D printer webcam. And so there it is. You can see it's leveling it. Let me see if I can raise this up a little bit. That's good. And so you can see that printer head, that probe, and it comes down and it'll take 9 probe spots to see if the part is level, because if it's not level, then you'll have build problems. It won't adhere to the build plate properly, and it has to be level. Okay, while that's doing that, I'm going to pause the video and wait for it to start extruding. So if we take a look at our screen here, we can see that we're running PLA, polylactic acid. The nozzle temperature is 34 degrees Celsius, and the platform is 32. Everything is in metric units for these 3D printers. Chamber temperature is 24, the doors are closed, and then that's our firmware. And so what it's going to do is it's going to bring the heating chamber up to temperature, and then once it's at temperature, it'll start to extrude the material. While I'm waiting for it to come up to temperature, I'm going to put some glue on the build plate. And I'm going to try to do it without moving the camera. Oops. So somehow it looks like I've lost my video connection. You can kind of see where I would be on the picture. I'll see if I can reestablish my video. It's always something. Unfortunately, I've lost my video connection just when I needed it. But if I stop sharing, I believe we'll be able to just see it on the camera. So I'm going to stop my share. And then you can see, I believe on the video, as it puts down this first layer of material. And so the machine will go through and start to put down the first layer of polylactic acid, PLA. And then after it does the first layer, the bed will move down 3 millimeters, 0.3 millimeters, and start extruding the next. Okay, now if we take a look at some of the material from the textbook, and I guess I'll have to bring my screen share back. When we look at the materials and things that we're working on this 3D 45 printer. It has a full enclosure, it has an RFID reader, which means that it senses what type of plastic we put in there, and it will then set up the material or the machine settings for the proper temperature and extrusion and pressure rates. The platform is removable. It has this touch screen for setting things up. And it has Wi-Fi and internet abilities, so we can actually print over the cloud. We'll be using this textbook, 3D Printer Hardware and Software. You should go through and read the first chapter, which is why we use a 3D printer. And it goes through a lot of different reasons that we would use it. Also talks about when 3D printing was developed back in the 1980s. And then it's very CAD based. 3D printing is what's called additive manufacturing, because versus something like a CNC machine, a computer numerical control machine, the material is added from the filament versus we put a block of steel on there and then it's cut or subtracted from the material. And so here's some information about that. Also, the founding father of 3D printer, Chuck Hull. And then kits versus fully assembled. We're purchasing fully assembled. A number of the students have purchased the Prusa, and they've had very good luck with those. And so that's probably our top kit. It's about $700 to $1,000 presently. And so here's some applications for 3D printing. And we also talk about how they run. They run on what's called G-code files. And G-code files are the same language that controls our CNC machines. And so they control the X, Y, and Z coordinates of the head. We also have a laser cutter. Laser cutting is the next best thing to 3D printing. It's very innovative. It's digital, it's quick. You don't have to fixture everything. It's very fast compared to 3D printing, much faster. And it can cut through 1/4 of an inch of plastic or wood, and be happy to demonstrate that at a later point. And then we also do CNC machining. CNC machining would be like this Haas mini mill. We have one of those over at the Skokie campus also. And this would be subtractive manufacturing, where you have a cutting tool actually removing material. I'll place this video or this PowerPoint in the module 2. You're welcome to go through it. And then you should answer the questions at the end of the chapter. Those are in the quiz area. So if we come back here to D2L, and then we go to the quizzes, you're to take the test 1, which will be have you answer the questions at the end of the chapter. And I think I have the wrong class. Let me switch that over. I'll double check on that, but there is a quiz for the Intro to 3D Printing, quiz 1. And I just have to find it. Here it is, review questions. And so you're to go through and fill out these questions, and then that information is contained in chapter 1. Okay, so that completes our weekly Zoom meeting. I'll see you next week online. Have a good day.